This is Math 2, 9.4 homework questions. Again, that's Math 2, 9.4 homework questions. All right, this is the worksheet that I'll be working off of, and I am going to do numbers 4, 5, 9, and 11. Those are the four I'm going to work out. I told you guys to skip these the other day. So I'm starting off with number 4. You'll need your calculator out. Okay, number 4, a triangular based prism with side lengths 6, 8, and 10, and a prism height of 14 yards. Find the volume. Okay, first off, remembering that volume equals area of the base times height. Now, first off, let me label the height of the prism. The prism height is 14. Remember, we talked in notes about the prism height always being the leg that connects the two bases, and the bases are always parallel to each other. So this is the base. This is a triangular base prism. There's a base, there's the base. There's 3 faces. You can see the slanted face here, the base at the bottom that's like would be touching the table, and then the face that's at the back. And I call this a base. I meant to say face. So there's the slanted face on the side, there's the face at the bottom that's touching the table, and there's the slanted face at the back. Those faces are not bases. Bases are parallel to each other, and the height of the prism connects those two bases. Okay, so triangular bases. Now, I'm just going to redraw that triangular base. Actually, I have room here. I can label it. It is 6, 8, and 10. All right, 6, 8, and 10. Now, I need to find the area of the base, and the area of the base is a triangle base, so it's base times height divided by 2. But your base and your height have to be perpendicular to each other. Is the 6 and the 8 perpendicular? I don't know. How can we find out? Remember in a previous lesson, I believe it was first semester, I gave you numbers and I would ask you, do these 3 numbers make a right triangle? And we had a way to test it. It was using Pythagorean's theorem. We do 6 squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared. If it works, it is a right triangle. If it does not work, then it's not a right triangle. So let's check it. 36 plus 64 equals 100, and 36 plus 64 is 100. Oh, thank goodness it worked, which means this is a right triangle. It did not tell us it was, but it is. How did we know that? We used Pythagorean's theorem to prove it, and since it worked, that means it's a Pythagorean triple, which means a Pythagorean theorem, it's a right triangle. Okay, so since it's a right triangle, I'm ready to find the area of the base. Area of the base is base, if you remember from our formulas, it's right here, base times height divided by 2. Now, when I talk about base and height, I'm not talking about the height of the prism. I'm talking about just the height of this triangle. So, base times height divided by 2. Base and height are perpendicular, so I'm not using the 10 anymore. I'm using the 6 times 8 divided by 2. I'm not using the 10 anymore. I just used the 10 to show that it was a right triangle. Since it is, I'm just using the 6 and 8 for the base and height, because base and height are always perpendicular. Okay, so I multiply this, I get 24, and we're ready for the volume. Volume equals area of the base, which is 24, times the height of the prism, and the height of the prism is this here, the 14 yards. So you multiply 24 times 14, and you end up with 336. 336 yards cubic yards. There's the volume of your triangular based prism. Okay, number 5. Number 5 got split between the 2 pages. It should have been on the next page, but I'm going to read it here. A rectangular prism with a volume of 80 centimeters cubed, find the value of x. If they give you the volume and ask you to find any piece of the prism, you're working backwards. This is a working backwards problem. Okay, so they gave us the volume is 80. That was given information. I was going to rewrite it here. And I believe it was centimeters cubed. Use that to find x. Okay. Volume is area of the base times the height of the prism. Now remember, we talked about when it's a rectangular base prism or square base prism, it's easier to think of it as length times width times height. Or you could still work with the area of the base times the height. It's going to work the same way. 80 equals 5 times x times x. 5 times x times x, which makes sense because if you chose this as the base, that would be 5 times x. So you would have 5x times the height of x, which is still going to be 5x squared. And we get 5x squared because x, you add the exponents when you're multiplying like bases, and you get x squared. Divide both sides by 5. 80 divided by 5 is 16. 16 equals x squared. Square root both sides, inverse operations, and we don't put the negative. Why is that? When you're square rooting both sides, we typically do plus or minus. But since we're dealing with a side length, the length of a side is never negative. So it's now, from now on, when we're dealing with these type of problems, only going to be a positive solution. So positive 4 centimeters. Okay? X is 4 centimeters. Now I told you guys previously to cross out number 7, and I'm going to do number 9, another one that got split between 2 pages. A cylinder with a height of 15 meters and a volume of 735 pi meters cubed, find the diameter. Another one, they give you the volume, you're working backwards. Okay, so I am going to write that same information on the next page. The height is, this is given information, height is 15 meters, and the volume is 735 pi meters cubed. All that's given information, I'm just rewriting it. Find the diameter. Okay, what's the formula for volume? I know the height is 15, and the volume is area of the base times the height. Okay, let's plug in what we know. We know the volume is 735 pi equals area of the base times 15. And what are they asking us for? They're asking us to find the diameter. I forgot to write that down. Find the diameter. All right, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so what am I going to do here? I'm going to divide both sides by 15. So go ahead and plug that in your calculator. 735 divided by 15. You should end up with 49. 49 pi equals the area of the base. Now I'm looking for the diameter, not the area of the base. But since the base is a circle, I can use that to find the diameter. The base is a circle, which means 49 pi equals pi r squared. And I can use this formula to find r, and I can use that to find the diameter. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of the pi. It's not needed. I can divide both sides by pi, and since it's on both sides, it reduces from both sides. So 49 equals r squared. Inverse operation, we square root. Square root, typically do plus or minus, but since we're dealing with side lengths, we only do positive. So positive 7 meters. Now, biggest, most common mistake kids make is they say, boom, I'm done. 7 meters is my answer, and it's wrong. Or it's a multiple choice question, and 7 meters is probably letter A's choice, and you're like, oh, there it is, I got it right, and it's still wrong. Why is that? The radius is 7 meters. That is correct. But they're asking for the diameter. So not that 7 meters is wrong, it's just not the answer. The radius is 7 meters, but it's not the diameter. The diameter is 14 meters because they're asking for diameter, and diameter is twice the length of the radius, which makes sense. If this is 7, total length would be 14. All right. Next one, number 11. Number 11 is a little tricky. Now, did I say number 12? I did not, but I'll at least talk about, actually, I will do number 12. I should have added that number up here as well. My apologies. Okay, number 11. Calculate the volume of the solid. So here is this rectangular prism, but the inside has been carved out. A prism has been carved out of the inside, and they want you to find the volume of what's left over. So what we're going to do, I'm going to cross this out. We don't need that. That's part of the next page, which we're not doing anyway. Okay, so what I need to do is find the volume of the large prism and the volume of the smaller prism and subtract the two. Okay, so imagine this big block piece of wood, and I carve out the middle and take it away, and I want to find the volume of what's left over. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the smaller piece, subtract from the larger piece. What's left over is my answer. Okay, because it's a rectangular base prism, it's just length times width times height for both of them. Length times width times height. Now, can you see for the bigger prism, here's my length, here's my width, here's my height. So it's 6, 3, and 7 that I'm going to use. 6 times 3 times 7, it's all feet. 6 feet times 3 feet times 7 feet. Plug it in your calculator. You end up with 826 feet cubed. All right, takeaway. Now, my smaller piece that got carved out is 2 by 2, and think of this as the depth, or how far in does that go. I know my height and my length. What is the width or the depth? How far in does it go? It's either 6, 3, or 7. Can you see that that is the depth that I use here? So it is 3. So I'm going to use 2 times 2 times 3. 2 times 2 times 3, or 2 times 3 times 2. It's going to work out the same. 2 times 2, think of that as the length and the width, and the height here is the depth of it, and that is 3. So that gives me 12 feet cubed, and they are like terms because they are both feet cubed. So I have 126 minus 12 is 114 cubic feet. Okay, moving on to the next one. Same type, and I'm still going to do volume of the large prism, which is the rectangular base, minus the volume of the smaller prism, which is that cylinder shape. Okay, so the larger one, because it is just a rectangular base, it's length times width times height. My inner one is area of the base times height because it is a prism. So a little more work. Okay, length times width times height is pretty easy because here's my length, here's my width, and here is my height. So 18 times 10 times 8. 18 times 10 times 8. Go ahead and plug that in your calculator. You end up with 1,440. 1,440 inches cubed. Takeaway. Now, area of the base, because my base is, okay, now, in this prism, my base are these two little itty-bitty circular pieces. Those that there are the bases. So the area of the base is pi r squared times the height. What is the radius? If that diameter is 4, the radius is 2, and the height is the piece that connects the two circular bases. That is the 18. So I have pi r squared times 18. 2 squared is 4, so plug in your calculator. 4 times 18, and that gives you 72. And the pi stays there, 72 pi inches cubed. Now, I cannot subtract these. They're not like terms. They both have inches cubed, but this has a pi and this one does not. So you have two choices. Plug in pi is 3.14, multiply it by 72, get a decimal, and then subtract the decimal from the 1440. That is one way, which I would accept. But if it's a multiple choice and your answer looks like this, I just want to show you that this is another way of writing it. Okay, so I would accept it this way. I would accept it this way. I'm not going to write it, but I would even accept it as a decimal, converting 72 pi into a decimal, subtracting it from 1440. I would accept it that way. Actually, I might as well just plug it in. 1440 minus 72 using my pi key equals 1213.805 inches cubed. Any one of these is correct. And I'm just showing you all three because if it's a multiple choice question, one test writer may write it this first way, one test writer may write it the second way, and a different test writer may write it the third way. You should know that all three are the same. All right, that is it for this section of homework questions.